Good evening. I'd like to attempt to call to order this special town council meeting for Wednesday, April 12th, 2023, workshop on the fiscal year 23-24 budget. Please rise for a moment of silence. Led the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Councillor Allenson.
Here.
Councillor Carmody.
Here.
Councillor Fishbein. Councillor Laffin. Councillor Marone. Councillor Tata.
Here.
Councillor Testa. Councillor Zandri. Councillor Cervoni.
Here. Thank you. There not being a quorum, we cannot officially call this a meeting, but those present should not be punished for being present. And we're going to go forward and allow questions to be asked. The first department up is the Public Utilities Commission, page 62 in the budget books. My fellow councilors, does anybody have questions for the Public Utilities Commission? Okay. Next up is the Electric Division, page 67 in your budget books. Good evening. If you could just remind us who you are for the record, please.
Rick Hendershot, Director of Public Utilities.
Mary Ann Dill, Business Office Manager.
Thank you. So if you've been following what's going on in the world with natural gas and all this other stuff, one might be concerned about chasing rates and what's going to happen to the rates in the foreseeable future. And I'm just wondering how that affects the coming year's budget.
Well, that's a good question, Mr. Chairman. If you look at page 67, yes, you can see our estimate of the future impacts of, for lack of a better way to say it, natural gas prices. In the, that's actually the revenues page. Well, no, that's not a bad place to do this, because when we prepared the budget for the electric division, a very modest rate change had been previously approved by the PUC. But when we did the numbers for the electric division budget, it became apparent that that rate change was not needed. The electric division was going to create enough revenue that that rate change was not necessary. And it was largely a restructuring of the rates, but it did have built into it a very modest increase in revenues collected. We've decided to postpone that, and this budget reflects that postponement. So the base rates, the published rates, aren't going to change on July 1. What could change is the power cost adjustment, which is a semi-annual true-up that we do. It's the electric division's rate 12. It's simply a spreadsheet that's part of our published rates, and we methodically gather all that data, fill it out, and it tells us what it tells us. And it both looks ahead at projected wholesale power costs for the upcoming 6 months, and it looks back at how well we've estimated and projected in the past, and if there's been any over or under collection And then that's addressed as part of the future as well. So the budget in front of you reflects our estimates of what we think power costs will be and the presumption that the period of time running up to it, we collected properly. But if there was any over or under, it'll adjust further. And the increase in projected revenues in fiscal year 23-24 reflects our anticipation of higher energy costs that the electric division will collect through the PCA.
Okay. So there's some things happening in town, you know, I see a handful more of electric vehicles. There's some changes in some of the businesses in town. I think some of the Class A office space is becoming light manufacturing, which I suspect uses more electricity. Is there a trend in increase in usage or not? I mean, at the same time, I think, you know, we're chasing efficiencies and
Yeah, our forecasts are not that granular. It's really the trending of past experience. And so my answer to that would be, we haven't seen that impact yet.
okay. Thank you. Any other questions? Councilor Carmody?
Good evening. This is probably more of a policy question that we could discuss at a further date, but I was just looking at the line 408 for taxes. We spend $2.6 million in taxes. Has the electric division ever looked at the purchasing of tax credits rather than paying the Department of Revenue Services? You know, I know we could purchase tax credits through the Neighborhood Assistance Act or the Housing Tax Credit Contribution Program that the state offers, and that, you know, could allow us to get this money back into our community for different projects or for two different organizations. I don't know if this is something that's ever been discussed before.
No,
No.
I've not heard the topic
Okay.
for just now.
Okay.
And so, to quote a line from a movie, I think, or paraphrase it, not fully understanding the question, I hesitate to answer.
Sure.
But
Well-
I can point out that the only taxes we pay are gross earning taxes on a portion of the electric division. I'd say ours, I'm sorry. I'm standing in for the electric division this evening because we are without a general manager, and the acting one is out of town on training, so I get the pinch hit. The only taxes the electric division pays are gross earning taxes on a portion of the electric division's revenue and property taxes in North Branford.
Okay. Yeah, and we could discuss this at a later date, and I could talk to you offline about it. I know that the Norwich Public Utilities did something similar recently where they were able to buy tax credits, and that money went to a local, organization doing a project within their community. So I know this is not really a budget question, but it's more of a policy question. We can have a discussion at a later date.
Give me a call anytime.
Cool. Thank you.
Any other questions for the electric division? That's all we have for you. Thank you. Up next is the water division. Thank you. Please remind us who you are for the record.
Neil Amwake, General Manager for the Wallingford Water and Sewer Divisions.
Don Langenauer, Business Manager for the Water and Sewer Divisions.
Thank you. We have questions for water? Councilor Tata,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, gentlemen. How are you?
Good evening.
I think you're unmiked.
There we go. Just a question, and I believe we talked about this last year too. But I'm noticing for water and sewer, it looks like there's an net loss. Looks like over 2 million. Looks like it's been increasing the past few years. And then sewer, I believe, has a similar net loss of 2.2 million, it looks like. So can you just explain what's going on there and why the loss, or is the loss concerning or not, or is it something we're planning for?
So this is, I will try to do the best I can to explain it. I have the benefit of looking at a spreadsheet, which I would be happy to share with you. So let's take this one at a time, and we always start uphill, or we always start with the water division. So I actually charted this beginning in fiscal year 2010 to 2011, all the way through fiscal year 21-22. So that is 12 fiscal years. And in 10 of those fiscal years, the adopted budget showed an appropriation from cash. So 10 of 12 showed an appropriation from cash. The actual or the audited budget in 11 of those 12 years showed an appropriation to cash. And I will point out the 1 year, that was fiscal year 15-16, where we had an appropriation from cash of 267,728, was due to a 2.106 net pension liability adjustment that came through the finance department. So big picture, I think when you look at the budget that we do put forward, it does show an appropriation from cash. That being said, we budget for 100% of our staffing in both the water and sewer divisions. So as currently, there are 68 full-time positions in the water and sewer divisions. As we stand here today, there are 12 vacancies. So that is wages, salaries, benefits, health care, pension obligations. That goes back. We also budget, quite frankly, we have open orders for small parts and emergencies throughout the year. We need to have them ready to go. So I don't want to say the budget is oversubscribed, but we need a plan A, plan B. I was in meetings today. What's our plan C? So the end of the year, we do have an appropriation to cash, typically on the water division. That goes back to retained earnings. So what that does is every June 30th, everything in operating that is not spent gets swept into retained earnings that then goes into cash. You know, and we are required to keep a certain minimum in cash. It's based on a formula. And then everything above that, quite frankly, we can use for rate stabilization. And I want to get back to that in a moment on the sewer division. So I'd be happy to share this with you, Councilor Tata.
You're fine.
You know, it's tough to explain, but I think, you know, when you look at it, it's like, oh my goodness. I will point out, you know, and this is prepared, the water division has contracted with New Gen Strategies and Solutions to undertake a financial forecast, retail cost of service study, and recommended retail rates. The project timeline is to present the study recommendations in fall 2023 with any new or updated rates effective for bills issued on or after July 1, 2024. The 4 focus areas include, though are not limited to, our basic service fee, the fire service charges, the consumption rate, as well as our debt service. Right now, we have very limited debt service, so we don't, you know, we have very little bond. So basically, all our capital projects, we are paying for cash. You know, that is, you look at what we look in the budget, think long term, that is unsustainable. I will point out that our consumption rate of 4.09 per 100 cubic feet has not changed since June 1 of 2015. And our basic service fee of 15.11 per quarter has not changed in a dozen years. And if you go back to 2001, it was 15.51. So literally for 22 years, we've had the same basic service fee, and we've been able to balance the budget. All right, so that's your water question. Do you want to go on with other water questions, or do you want to jump over to your question on sewer?
Well, Councilor Allenson, do you have any questions for Water Division?
I do not.
Well, looks like we get to jump over to the sewer.
That's not a good place to go.
So, we have debt on the sewer side, don't we?
So we do. And so I want to talk about, so we'll go with, again, I have the benefit of the same spreadsheet, going back 12 fiscal years, so fiscal year 2010, 2011, all the way forward to 2021, 2022. In our audited or actual budgets, again, in 10 of those 12 years, we actually had an appropriation to cash. The two exceptions are fiscal year 12-13, where we had an appropriation from cash in order to, at our audited budget of $14,478. So very, very small compared to our overall budget. And again, if we look at 15-16, that is where we had a $930,000 net pension liability adjustment. So big picture, we do look at the debt. Several years ago, we are in the final stages of our wastewater treatment plant upgrades project. There's a grant portion to that, there's a loan portion to that, and then there's a local share portion of that. So we have strategically used retained earnings or retained cash to pay for some items rather than put them through the loan portion. So right now, on a monthly basis, we submit invoices from the contractor as well as the designer, and we can get a loan. The grant percentage is 37.8102%, and then we can also do local share. So we made the conscious decision that for the design portion, which is $3.305 million, to pay, rather than take the loan portion of that, we pay cash. So we take the grant portion, and then rather than take the loan, we pay cash. So we have strategically used those retained earnings on the sewer side so we don't incur greater debt. And I have the debt and grant and local figures for you if you would like them.
Since you're prepared, why hold back?
Okay, so this is through February 20th, 2023 for the wastewater treatment plant upgrades project. The loans pulled to date, or the loans obtained to date, $31,433,171.49. The grant portion, $20,207,542.94, and the local share, $1,857,977.85. So we've strategically used that. It's basically a little bit for rate stabilization. We have to keep minimum cash or minimum retained earnings. That is something we review every 6 months as part of our business operations. And above that, very similar to the water division or the electric division, we use it for rate stabilization. Did that address your question?
Yes, very much so. Thank you.
So those numbers add up to about $52 million. Did I do that right?
51,640,714.43.
I did round up.
Oh, no, sorry. So that's grant and loan. You add in local, it is 53,498,692.28.
Okay. And that seems to me to be about $6.5 million less than I thought that project was going to cost. Are we done with the construction, or are we still working on it?
So at this point, we are 99.90% paid to the contractor. We are dealing with some punch list items. One is to get a subcontractor back, and one is really a material item. So that is on the construction side. On the design and construction administration side, which is our engineer, that will continue for about the next 6 or 8 months. There are some reports that you have to do within the first year and turn them into DEEP. You may recall the funding ordinance was for $60.0 million. It included $45.507 for the contractor. we had to include 5% contingency for change orders. We are currently at 1.85% for contingency for change orders. So to date, you put that in perspective, that's a $45.507 million project with an aggressive design schedule. After 42 months of active construction, our change orders are less than $850,000, our net change orders are less than $850,000. So, and then, you know, don't forget we had some other contingencies, which we called the CMAC contingency in case something terrible happened and we started cross-suing each other. So against the $60 million, correct, we are less than that. And part of that is because we have strategically paid cash.
Which is great. So the debt service is about 31 million, did you say?
Currently it's 31.4 million. We should end up 31.75, don't quote me. You know, I mean, I think we still have some engineering fee to go. You know, right now, the only thing outstanding with the contractor is $61,000.
Great. And so we're paying that 31.575, whatever it is. We're going to pay that back over 20 years? Is that our plan?
It is a 20-year, 2% simple interest loan.
Okay. You can't buy money cheaper than that. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Other questions about sewer stuff? Mr. Beaumont, welcome.
Yeah, Bob Beaumont, Chairman of the PUC. I just wanted to make a comment. You take a look at a project that was designed as rapidly as this one was, to only have approximately 1.85% in change orders. That is a phenomenal credit to our staff, to the contractor, and to the engineer, but particularly to our staff. And you know, that is Neil, that is Dan Sullivan, our superintendent down at the sewer division. These people have put in a phenomenal amount of time. They have done a tremendous job for the town of Wallingford and for the Public Utilities Commission. So I just wanted to make that comment in an open session. I know it's not technically a regular meeting, but I wanted to make that comment because they deserve the credit and the plaudits for having done that. Thank you.
I think that's a point well made, and it's a point well taken. It's, thank you for pointing that out and for reminding me that I glossed over it.
Mr. Chairman?
Mayor.
Yeah, I have to make a comment which won't surprise probably anyone here, but obviously with the electric, we don't have a rate increase. With water, we don't have a rate increase. There is a rate increase for sewer. It's close to 14%. In the years since 2020, the sewer rate has gone up almost 46%. That's 46%. Why? Because of the phosphorus project, which, again, has absolutely no impact upon human health and safety, but we're following the dictates of the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection. And in my opinion, the state should pay for this rather than the ratepayers. So ratepayers also get some credit here for absorbing what at this point is a total 46% increase in rates since 2020.
Duly noted as well. Councilor Tata.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I also want to note, too, I believe the project was pretty much on schedule, too, correct?
Correct. So we needed to turn on the tertiary phosphorus treatment system on April 1 of 2022. We turned it on March 27th.
Perfect. So,
And we did meet our new regulatory requirements. So the tertiary phosphorus season is April 1 to October 31st each year. Our limit, which is now flow-paced, is 8.95 pounds per day, and we did meet that seasonal average.
so if we're lucky enough to be invited back in July for our annual tour, the project will be done, hopefully.
With the exception of one item that we're waiting on a material item for, yes.
Perfect. Thank you.
It'll be a hot day or rain.
It always is. It's always the hottest day of the year.
Yeah, can we not do it at the height of the summer and all the humidity? Can we do it like, I don't know, in November or March?
What's the fun in that?
The other alternative is our staff is there at 6:30 a.m. A pre-breakfast tour is certainly on the table.
No thanks.
Well, that's generous. Thank you. Any other questions for or about sewers? Thank you very much. That's all we have for public utilities. And the rest are about the town's finances. Finance, page 20. Do we have questions regarding finance? All right, that's a no. Moving along to capital appropriation reserve. Anyone? Finally, debt services. I actually might have something for that. Just as a general question, what do we have in total bonds outstanding?
It's the next, if you flip the page in your binder, it's right there. But as of, it's $30,380,000.
Okay. And so that page very nicely details the age of the bonds. Am I reading that correctly? The stuff.
So those are, each column is a bond issue
Yep.
and what's due each year for those specific issues.
Okay. So if we don't add any bonds, or, well, I shouldn't say if we don't, because we're going to. If we didn't add any bonds for the coming budget term, where would we be in terms of bonding at the end of fiscal year 23-24? Thank you for bringing a calculator.
$26,585,000.
Okay, that's helpful. And we've authorized the bonding ordinance for the police department.
So I would expect that, so if you look at the new debt financing line, that money is in there. I'm expecting to probably have to actually issue bonds in August, September once the police station gets rolling.
And we do that gradually as we need to make payments towards contractors and materials. We're not going to go out and incur a $30,000 bond right away. We're going to bond as we need it, right?
Correct. Well, I'm trying to plan this to go at the same time when we have to when we have to turn the clean water fund notes into actual, instead of it becomes an official note instead of once the project's done.
Yep.
So we'll try to do that, and any other projects that we have going on that needs more funding. If I try to schedule it so when we bond, we're only paying the bond counsel, the ratings, all that stuff once, so we're not doing it multiple times.
Okay. And remind me, we start incurring the debt, we start issuing bonds, and at what point after we've borrowed the money do we start the repayment?
So it depends on how we want to work the deal, but it's definitely within 12 months.
Yep.
So I would expect, the way I'm budgeting, to have enough to make a transfer out of that new debt financing to pay the interest on anything. We would probably schedule it so that we'd only have to make one interest payment in the first year.
Yep. Mayor?
Mr. Chairman, and members of the council, I think behind that somewhat is there are communities who use bond anticipation notes, which we do not.
Correct.
So at times, the bond anticipation notes would have you paying interest. You pay nothing on principal for a period of time, and then suddenly you start with a principal, and it suddenly becomes a big hurdle.
Right.
But we do not use bond anticipation notes for that reason.
And it ultimately saves us money, right?
It saves you money. The main reason why a town would use bond anticipation notes is they don't have cash on hand to front the expenditures, so it's a lot easier to do a bond anticipation note and get a quick influx of cash.
So our money in the bank gives us the flexibility to avoid those notes.
Correct.
Okay.
Change on the table.
Well, that was dramatic. Any other questions regarding debt service? All right. There being nothing else to discuss, I will adjourn this meeting, or this non-meeting, or whatever it is.